So we're here with Adam Forde, Cairns Taipan's head coach, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about coaching and delivery, but probably more from a head coach's perspective. Obviously we've got our students that come from a sports science background, maybe like personal training, or they might have some technical skills from coaching that they've brought from sports as well. But some of them might end up in kind of a high performance environment or might want to end up there. So I thought it'd be really cool to get your perspective on that as a coach first, and how you kind of use that in your everyday practice as well as just your general coaching. We'll have a chat about some other things as well. So welcome. If you want to give us a bit of a background on you.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like now it's probably gone on 15 years coaching basketball. Started off in Perth and a couple of years in Sydney, now here at the Taipans. But I feel like, especially in regards to the sports science side of things, I've had involvement with every level, from a state league where it was, as you said, like, you know, guys who had personal training experience, to even now working with you guys and everything in between. So yeah, basketball's been a good portion of my life for over a decade, and yeah, basically that's about it.
Yeah, cool. No, that's cool. We'll touch on like the grassroots and stuff later, I think, as well, because that's where I think, and I encourage a lot of our guys, like if they want to end up in sort of those sorts of positions, they've got to be involved at grassroots level first.
Yeah, it definitely helps, for sure.
It's a huge thing to like cut your teeth on. But maybe I guess like we'll start in like your current professional environment now. There's a lot more crossover now with the sports science and S&C kind of requiring work with you as a head coach or your assistants and physios. How have you sort of seen that evolve, or how do you cross that over from your side? Because I know what it's like for me trying to like cross over with you or other staff that are involved in other stuff that I've done. But yeah, just want to know kind of from that coaching side how you cross over to sports science and S&C and sort of see how that works.
Yeah, for me personally, where I'm at right now, I probably defer a lot to you guys for that, the heavy lifting side of it when it comes to the player management, the player load, dealing with the day-to-day, the week-to-week and over the season. You know, when I first started out, and especially just in coaching, it was just coaching, like coaching basketball. Conditioning was making kids run laps, you know, or go out and run a 4.5K in X amount of time and you know, record it and then do it again in a couple of weeks' time. And that was pretty much the extent of it. And now it gets to the point where we're referring to guys at different stages of their career, you know, style of play and the way we want to play, which obviously is fast and up and down, to be able to say how are we tracking today and not have to worry about the nuts and bolts of it. Like, I just want to know what the answer is. Is huge. And so, you know, I've worked with other coaches before. Some really deep dive into it and want to know everything. Others sort of have it there on a piece of paper written down that, you know, they might, you know, take on board or maybe not. And I feel like I've found a balance in between trying to juggle what is necessary for the basketball side of things, but also not trying to you know, step outside of that, knowing that it's a long season, knowing that you know, it's a intense environment, and we want these guys performing not only at the right time of the week, depending on the game day, but also the right time of the year. So, you know, the crossover and the information I usually ask for is, you know, tell me what I need to know in a sense of today and tomorrow and for the week moving forward. But also, I don't need to know all the, you know, the ins and outs to it. I don't need to know the technicality. I just need to know what the end product is. And for me, it's massive.
Yep. Yeah, cool. I think that's a big one, is learning how to communicate the information effectively to coaches that, and there's different coaches like different levels of information too. So have you found in the past that you've had sports science or S&C staff that kind of over inundate you with information, or there's not enough, and how do you kind of feed back to them what you need?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one, because it's really it's how the organisation is sort of set up, I guess. So I use Perth through my time at Perth for an example, where Trevor's a little bit old school in the way he used to manage and deliver practice. And so we had, during my time at Perth, we had two really good S&C coaches, Will Marwick, who's now with the Melbourne Rebels, I think, and Josh Kavanagh, who's still there. And these guys' experience are like, you know, masters, you know, in a sense of, you know, their knowledge and their industry knowledge. And it was just like a one-man crew though. So, they sort of had to manage everything from the communications and comms with physio to medical to the player, and then relay that back to the coach. Another example is Sydney, which had more of a high performance type team, and they were separate to the coaching staff. And then obviously in our situation here, where we also do have a high performance team, but the communication and comms are different in how we deliver that information. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think it really comes down to the preference not only of the head coach, but also the preference or the strengths of who's in charge. Some guys can be, a little bit more forceful with their messaging and what they want to get across because they feel like it's relevant and important. But then also they maybe know that the person who's receiving it, isn't as receptive to that information. And so trying to find that balance of what works and what doesn't work probably plays more to the strength and conditioning side more than anybody else because, they're an extension of the team and the coaching staff. But I know from my personal experience how I've evolved in not only what information I need and how I want it delivered. I'm different to what I was 12 months ago. I was different to what I was 3 years ago, and I know I'll be different again in a year from now as I learn more about it from my inexperience and layman's side of it. So
I think you probably have a pretty good understanding of the sports science and analytics compared to
I go with the one-on-one. I go to the Idiot's Guide to S&C.
Idiot's Guide to S&C. But that's important, like the S&C coach, like you said, an extension of the coaching staff, because, outside of the core sort of coach and assistant coach, they spend the most amount of time with the athletes on a one-on-one environment in the weight room, where often coaching staff aren't around or sometimes drop in and out. So I think that's an important skill that they've got to learn to understand what it is that the coaches want out of that, and then how they deliver that message in the weight room or conditioning aspects, however you look at that, but in their own style as well.
Oh yes, you've got to be genuine.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
To piggyback on the back of that too, also communicating with the athlete, and also they'll have a better if an athlete comes to me and goes, oh, my ankle feels like this, or my hamstring's a little bit tight, or I'll take that for what it is. Like, okay, they're feeling sore. Whereas if it goes through the S&C side, they'll be like, okay, well, the hamstrings are a little bit tighter because we went on a high lift today, so that's normal and you'll be fine. Or, no, that is something to flag and concern, and maybe that's more severe than what the athlete's initially just telling us, who's maybe playing it down. And also you get a better understanding of that when they start to build that rapport with the basketball, with the player. So for me, when I hear, his back sore today, that information, I hear it for what it is. But when the high performance crew hears the player go, oh, my back is sore, there's a deeper understanding of, okay, why is it sore, and the severity of it based on the athlete and what the workout load was that week. And so that's the type of information that I need to come back to me to go, oh, he's good to go, but we might just go at 80%. Whereas if I just heard that and gone, oh, his back's sore, I might sit him out, or I might say, no, you're soft, go play, and then I make it worse. So that's where that information and how the communication between the athlete, high performance, and coach is super important for not only day-to-day, but for the whole season.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you use a fair bit of the sports science analytics currently with tight ends. And for those who don't really understand that, that's the catapult system. The guys wear it during training and games. That gives us like a live feedback of what their current external workload is. We kind of, as a high performance crew, understand what they've done, like their chronic load and then their acute load that they're doing that week or coming into a game. Again, so this is kind of a thing similar to what I asked before, but you as a coach, like, you obviously have a good understanding of the load and all that, but how does that, or how have you found kind of building your sessions now around training load with this kind of like prescription that the high performance team gives you, because you have basketball stuff you need to get done. So that's like top of the tree is basketball. Right? And then there's the physiological or physical preparation that goes underneath that we underpin it. But how do you find the balance of HP team saying you've got X amount of load to play with today, tomorrow and Thursday, but we play Saturday, or build a session? And
again, this is probably where it's evolved for me, especially this season, even comparative to last season, is to not only talk about the load and the level of intensity, but that game-like intensity. And so, we play a certain style which is fast and it requires, it's taxing on the body. So it's important to make sure that if I want game intensity practice, that doesn't mean as it used to be as recently as 5-6 years ago, where coaches would go 5 times a week and train 2 hours a day, and you just go hard and expect that to be the norm, and then guys are burning out at the wrong time of the season and even at the wrong time of the week. But understanding, going, okay, those boundaries as well, what's considered that game-like intensity, where I got this window for, let's say, this particular practice, where they say, hey, we need to get, and this is what's cool in the language as well, is to say we need to hit this KPI today of 10 minutes game-like intensity, and then designing a drill to be able to hit that. That's relevant to like whatever skills we wanted to put in, or scout perspective of who we're playing. But the fact that the boundaries moved from year 2 to year 1, and so understanding of going, hey, what used to be game-like intensity and high last season, well, now it's actually, because who we recruited and the players we brought in and where their baseline is, that's actually gone up. And so now those drills from year 1 don't hit the game-like intensity that we need for the group of year 2. I never would have known that. And there's the chance, right, when you talk about the 1%ers and the little things that make the difference, that drills that I would have done year 1 for this year 2 group, we wouldn't even hit those markers that we wanted in a sense of game-like intensity and getting that pace and getting that condition in. And again, when you do that and you do it again next week and do it again next week, and they get better conditioned for it, so then you transfer it to the game and then add the pressure and the intensity of the crowd and the game-like moment, and okay, now there is that up-down part of the game where there's no timeout call, there's no referee interference, it's just this free-flowing game. And seeing the opposition burn out before we do because we've conditioned ourselves for it, that doesn't happen with even the simplest information of going, hey, this actually, we can go harder this year than we did last year. So that's some of the coolest stuff, especially with the analytics side of it, is to know where your boundaries are and to push them. And when those boundaries move, to also have an understanding of why they moved and where they've moved to.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool this year, how we did have those differences between the groups from last season, this season, and sitting on the sideline, because I'm usually in the tunnel and away from you guys and all that, and we're seeing all the analytics happen, and the commentary teams are always sort of commenting on the style of play and how fast it is and all that, but on our end, we're sitting there pretty confident.
Yeah.
To be honest, because we know these guys hit these numbers in training or more. Even so, we use a player load per minute metric, which obviously you're familiar with, but not everyone knows that. And so we'd be seeing, a game around 12 to 14 or something like that. But routinely in the week, we were hitting 15 to 16s.
Yes.
So we're 10 to 15% higher than that in drills. And so the way we look at that from our end is all right, so we're not necessarily going to get the same volume as a game.
Yes.
Because that's 40 minutes of game time, which is 2 hours in real time.
Yes.
But how do we best prepare them? Because we've already built a base in our pre-season.
Yeah.
And then on our end, we use our periodization in terms of keeping intensity high in the season with lower volume, because we've got short turnarounds, double headers, triple headers, fly to Perth, fly home, all those sorts of things. So yeah, we have those 10 or 8 minute blocks of intensity, and that's the way that we periodize our intensity for physical. And that kind of leads me to my next one, because I know that this year you've kind of brought in this technical and tactical periodization as well. So I don't know if you want to maybe touch on that and explain what that means for you and in basketball, because I find that really interesting, and I've sort of followed Mourinho a little bit through his career, and I think it's cool that that's being adopted in basketball.
Yeah, so the biggest takeaway from it is the 4 moments in the game.
Yeah.
And so it's comparative to, as well, let's say I'm learning to play the guitar, and I've got a song and it's the hardest piece that I need to work on. And so I can start at the beginning of the song and go all the way up into the point where it's really, really hard, and then I'm like, bugger it, and I'll do it again.
Yep.
So I go again from the start, and I go through all the way to the song where I get to the hard part again, and then I bugger it up again. I'm like, but the thing is I'm taking all this time to get to that point, right? And so why don't I just condition myself at the hardest part? and then keep doing it, and then maybe come back to the start of the song and work my way up there, but just repetitive on the hardest part. And so being able to do that with our practice, where we can take moments in the game and say, okay, this is what we're going to work on, and knowing that, as we said, like, you know, you can't go 2 hours every day. You can't do the start of a game and the finish of a game every single day and expect guys to still be fresh by the end of the week. So the periodization side of things, and this is what we've done a great job of this year, is we break it up into 3 types of days. We've got a high day, which can be a scrimmage day. We've got a moderate day, which is like a half court into 1 full court scrimmage and stop. And then we've got a captain's run, which was primarily just half court. So, okay, I'm going to take the hardest part of the song, which is transition defense. And that's required a lot of conditioning and down and back. Okay, I can't do that on a low day. I might be able to do a little bit of a moderate day, but we can definitely do that on a high day. So all the drills that I'm going to do, knowing that if the play load for today is 600, I don't want to waste it.
Which is pretty high.
Which is very high,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to waste it on doing drills that aren't relevant to that moment in the song, that moment in the game, where I can really capitalize on it, knowing also that I can't do that on any other day. So my high day, which is going to be a lot of transition offense, transition defense, and the drills that we run have to fall into those 4 moments of the game, which is half court organization on the offensive end, half court organization on the defensive end, transition from offense to defense, transition from defense to offense. So we can do that. And then let's say we've got a moderate day, which is, let's say, a 420, 450. And now I go, okay, I want to incorporate my half-court organisation on the defensive end. And I'm going to reward the defence, because if they get the stop, they get a chance to go down the other end for a bonus point. But then the drill stops, because if you go down, back, boom, suddenly becomes a high day again.
And then you've got Steph on the sideline on the computer,
yes,
telling you to
cut it down, or ease it up, or take
and you lose a drill at the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the cool thing about it is we've got a great sample size of the last 2 years with all these drills to know where we fall. So when I plan my practice at the start of the day, and I go, today's a moderate day. So today we got 450. So I'm going to use today for a lot of half-court organisation on the defence, and for little spurts of maybe full-court transition offence. So I tick 2 moments in the game model. I'm ticking boxes on the play load side of it. And then I've got a library, I've got a catalogue of drills we can use where Steph has put in what the average is. And we've done it enough where it's like, hey, this is a pretty good sample size to say if we do this for 10 minutes, the play load's going to equal 86. And then that 86 is going to go towards the overall 450 for the day. And so I can plan out practice and say, okay, we can get pretty close to this 450, which is going to keep us fresh, knowing that today's a moderate day, that we're going to go into a high day tomorrow, and then a low day, and then we've got game day on the Saturday, whatever it may be. But as I'm taking care of the physiological side of things and the mental and all those things for the guys, I'm also tapping into the tactical side by saying, hey, the drills that we're doing today are relevant because this is our half-court organisation on defence for when we play Adelaide, and these are the chances where we're going to look to score easy opportunities in transition offence, whatever it may be. You don't want to waste time, importantly, doing drills that aren't transferable to the game, because also whatever you do not only relates to time in practice, but also time on feet. And so you might do a subtle drill, which is, let's say, a 3-man weave to warm up, but you do that for 6 to 7 minutes, and now Steph communicates and goes, oh, that's 50 off the play load. And you're like, oh man, I didn't do anything for the game. And so now your 450 days become 400 before you've actually done anything relevant to the game. So this is where it's important from the coaching side of things, from the sports science side of things, from the analytics, the physical, and how it all ties in together. And, you know, we've got 2 years under our belt now where I feel like we've got a pretty good system in place, which is, you know, for the most part working, you know, and we can only get better and evolve for year 3.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that idea with the split of that technical and tactical load that you'd communicate with the guys at the start of practice. Like, right, so today's only moderate, 450 or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's a high tactical aspect, which means they're going to have to be mentally switched on, which has its own kind of trade-off for physical challenges and stuff as well, because if they're mentally switched on more for 50 minutes, that's going to be pretty tiring for them. But it's like, guys, you're running to corners, catching and shooting.
Yes.
it's not a high mental load, but physically they're
habitual training where we're trying to make a second nature, for sure, and it's still relevant to like what we want to do in terms of our game model.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things as well, that when people are learning or getting involved in this environment, is trying to understand that obviously there's high technical, tactical requirements from coaching staff, and that's going to take pretty big precedent, especially in season. So then how do you balance that through the week when you've travelled somewhere, you come back on a Monday, you might train Tuesday, Wednesday, then you're playing again Friday. So you've got to balance all these things in here. So do you feel like your coaching has evolved over the last 4 or 5 years into like a more efficient use of time?
Yeah.
Now that you have like that feedback to get a picture of it, like there's just less junk.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And my time with Will Weaver really opened my eyes up to it. So he gave us some reading material, and even he was evolving at the time as well in a sense of like what to implement and what not to implement. So, a little bit of reading material in terms of like periodization suddenly moves into the realms of like European soccer, and this is what we talked about before, Marino, with what he did with Porto, and what he's been doing since. But you go, okay, there's a lot of things that are transferable. Now, when I first started out, it was 3-man weaves and going for 2 hours, and you train hard, you play hard, and the old saying was, you want to train hard so the game becomes easy, or train harder than you play. But the reality is we all misinterpreted that. Maybe we didn't misinterpret. Maybe that's what the message was, but it was interpreted as, go hard for 2 hours, go twice a day, wake up 6 in the morning, get in before everybody else, and do it again in the afternoon. But the reality is more to do with utilising time and time management to say, okay, what you do allocate has to be relevant, has to be transferable, and it's got to be game intense. It's got to be like a game in terms of what you're doing on the training floor, but also you can't do it every day, twice a day, for 7 days a week, because when you do get to the game, your body's going to break down on you, and it's just natural. We're not built like machines, and so that's what's probably the biggest evolution, even in the last 3 years, of how I've gone about managing my practices and my training, and a lot of that is to do with the sports science side of it. And again, I don't have any education in it. I have no background in it. It's just from working with everybody else and working with different people in the same field, like coaching. Everybody has their own interpretation of how they want to run practice.
Absolutely.
And so even learning from what someone's preference is in Perth compared to what someone else's preference was in Sydney, to what someone's preference was in New Zealand when I was over there, to what it here is in Cairns, and finding a good balance and blend, just like every other assistant coach or player that you have on your team. The sports science side of it's no different in the sense that they have their own personality, the only way going about things, and that's genuine, and that's what makes it work.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's probably like a type of coach that I wouldn't necessarily gel with in terms of communicating or working with, just with differing styles and ways that we approach practice. But we seem to have a reasonably complementary one, I think.
Works for now.
Works for now. Mostly on the same level. So when we're like 3/4 way through practice and someone's done something they weren't meant to, and player load blows through the ceiling.
Well, the players want to run it back. Because that's also the balance too, right? So that's the genuine thing that happened this year, where it was like we scrimmage up into this point, we ticked all the boxes that we wanted, and even from a coaching perspective, I ticked all the boxes I wanted. But the losing team was aggravated and they wanted to go again, and the winning team wanted to shove it back in their face and they wanted to go again. And so but the cool thing about it is the group understands the whys behind it. So they look to you and they ask, can we do that again? And the level of competitiveness and energy is through the roof, that you want to encourage it. But then also the negotiation of, okay, that means you guys are doing an extra 20 minutes recovery. That means when bro's got you in the gym, that you're doing an extra 5 minutes on stretch band, or you're doing, everyone's got a ice bath or recovery, or whatever it may be, and the players' understanding of, okay, that's what we're willing to accommodate for because we want to go again. And that's a pretty cool environment, knowing that you want to encourage the competitiveness, because you don't want to tell guys no, they can't go again when the energy's through the roof, but also understanding that by going an extra 10 minutes, there's a withdrawal, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever it may be. you're withdrawing a pretty large amount from yourself. How are you going to deposit those back in? And yeah, it might just be an extra 10 minutes recovery, doing stretch bands, or going for a walk on the foreshore, or making sure that you turn the alarm off and you sleep in for an extra hour. All these things add up, and the players understand it, which is cool. And when that is your environment and it becomes non-negotiable, no one questions it. It just becomes part of the norm, and that's really important too.
Yeah, and I know, like, from our end, when we're looking at those sorts of things, and it's like, hey, do we go again? Do we go for an extra 10 minutes? Or can we get an extra 5 minutes out of this guy who's returned to play on injury or something like that? For on my end, when I'm always looking at it, I never try and think black and white.
Yep.
Like, this is an absolute cut-off threshold point.
Yeah.
Right, like, we've set boundaries, we've got an understanding of what they've done, what they can handle, but within that, there's a buffer.
Yes.
And there's also that, and we call it kind of auto-regulation to an extent. So if the guys are feeling good and they want to go harder, you foster that. Because tomorrow they might not feel like that, and you might not get it out of them. So we use it as a very good guide and a basis, like a set of kind of rules to govern us by. But at the same time as well, we have flexibility in that.
Yep.
Because coaching staff might want to do this, or a player might want to put up more shots for whatever reason they're working on a particular aspect of their game. So I think that's important for, like, us on our end when we're dealing with coaching staff and players or athletes of any kind of caliber.
Yeah.
If they want to go, you try not to put too many brakes on people that want to do that. But then, like you said, you then just have more conversations. All right, you're going to have to do more recovery. You've got to make sure you're looking after your sleep and your food and all those sorts of things.
And it's the education behind it too, as you said. Not only the working relationship between the coaching staff and the sports science staff, but also the players understanding. Some guys want to know a lot, some guys don't want to know any. But as long as they get the why and they become satisfied with what the why is, you generally have a pretty good response from it all.
That kind of brings me a little bit, you touched on some of, like, the way that you're coaching and setting up the practices, and you obviously have your own coaching style that you've evolved and stuff like that, and you get athletes to what I can observe, and obviously it's sort of observed as well in a lot of the commentary around, is that you kind of bring a lot of athletes along the journey with you, or get them to buy in to what you're doing. And there's sort of two parts to it. So there's a couple of ways to become a professional coach. I guess there's the pathway you took, and you can talk about all the grassroots stuff. But then there's that kind of, like, you're a pro, and then you fall into a coaching gig, which kind of gives that street cred to some,
for sure,
on that, and that kind of confidence and competence in the area. Whereas you've had to come through, like, talking like under 10s, under 15s, like. Yeah, so tell us about that. Like, because you took that pathway, which is, for me, the grind.
Yeah.
If you look at Mourinho as well, he wasn't a high-level pro. He played at a decent level, but he knew the game. And
No, and it's true. And I guess when you talk about the street cred side of things, that's the grind has its own sense of street cred, in a sense that my whole background's been player development. And so even coming up through, Basketball Australia pathways and working for Basketball WA as development manager and as a high performance coach, for the 16s and 18s, and then an entry level position with the Perth Wildcats. Everything was player development along the way. My philosophy then is the same philosophy now, in a sense of is almost like is a price of admission, in a sense of being part of our team. We talk about, obviously, the success of Bull and Keanu and guys who were, quote unquote, plucked from obscurity, where now, they're being recognised for the type of athletes that they are. But, the reality is that the part that I play in that is minimal compared to what they have to put in, because I sort of show them the direction and the way we want to go about it and provide them the platform. But the work that's put into it is hard, and it's not for everybody. There's a saying I've got where if it, and I like it, and I don't know where I got it from, but if it doesn't grow, it rots. And that is pretty much the philosophy that we do with recruiting, in that you're either trending upwards or you're trending downwards. There's no real middle ground with players. And so this is also the brutal nature of professional sports, right? Is, we can look at the success and how great it is for guys like DJ and Keanu and Sam, who all had a season where they won awards, most improved again, second team, all that cool stuff. And they want to keep trending in that direction, and we can provide that platform. The one percenters who are most elite, like your LeBron Jameses and Kobe's and so forth like that, yes, they're blessed with the physical attributes, but a lot of it is grind and hard work, and play development, and the coaches they've had along the way, and the hours that they put in and all that. It all adds up. So that's always been my background from coaching juniors.
Yep.
They've got to put the grind, they've got to put the work in themselves, and we come to a mutual ground where it's beneficial for player and coach, and you get that buy-in. Works for teenagers, works with young men, works with professionals, it works with amateurs.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so it's like that integrity of yourself, you're putting something forward, laying the table, foundations for them to grow, but there's accountability on them to come and do the work.
100%.
I think, that's massive.
I can't put the ball in the hoop for you, basically, and so, the little one-handed floater that Taj makes during the game, that one shot, but there's been thousands of practice reps perfecting that and getting that better. That doesn't happen overnight, and so someone who, like in Taj, who's been part of the grind and the process, and then when you see that little 1 foot floater shot that is nice and it goes in and everyone quickly moves on from, the hours that it goes into just for that type of shot is huge. And again, not everyone's willing to pay that price of admission. Those who will and want to, they got a spot here at Cairns.
Yeah, cool. I guess we're probably getting around to near the end of it, but probably from your perspective, because you have been across a couple of different systems in NBL in Australia.
Yep.
How would you say that a sports scientist or an S&C coach, because they are separate, I think, but often sometimes they're combined roles, because budgetary.
Sure.
Budgets are budgets, right? You can't argue with that. How do they show value to an organisation or a coach in that team environment?
Yeah.
What would be important from your side for them? Because you might sit down, you've got a budget, say you've got whatever, $500,000 for wages or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Where do I put it?
Yeah.
Am I going to spend $80,000 on a strength coach or whatever? How are they going to show you they're valuable to an organisation apart from, hey, their 1RM went up in the gym this week, which, cool, but...
It's probably similar to coaching in the sense that, everyone to an extent's got the knowledge base. Some people might have more knowledge than others, right? But it's the delivery and it's their adaptability. And so you see it more and more now where American professional teams are taking on like Australian S&C and sports science and physios and everything along those lines, because the education process is far more extensive than what it is in the States. But what gets them those positions and what gets them the positions overseas and here is their adaptability to their environment. And that also is, again, like I think of my first S&C coach I worked with in Perth, Will Marwick had a background in, I think he had a background in AFL, coached in the NBL, was an S&C in the NBL, and then went to Melbourne Rebels, so rugby union. And so even adaptability of crossover of sports, but what he was really good at was he was approachable, he was genuine, he knew his stuff because the way he delivered it. Now the reality is I don't know, you could put that dude in a classroom as someone who's a super genius and this other guy will test better in all the theory side of it than the guy who is, like over here. But if he can deliver the message better and get the results because the players understand the why and again, understanding the person approach of it, adapting to your environment, he's going to be more employable. And I'll take a guy that gets results and knows 50% of the textbook compared to the guy who knows 100% of the textbook but just can't rally the guys to want to do this stuff. So I guess for me, in a sense of like who I'm employing and who I'm looking at and who I want to become part of my team, the people side of it is massive. The knowledge base is absolutely critical because I'm reliant on that. But again, like with everything, it's like coaching. You can know all the basketball, you know all the X's and O's, but if you can't get the guys to execute, well, then you don't really know anything. Being adaptable is massive.
Yeah, but like you said, so like you also don't want to know all the theory.
I don't want to know all the theory.
Like, you just want to know that they know the theory.
Yes.
And they can communicate to you what's important.
Really important.
And like the level of communication that they'd have with you is pitched differently to a player.
Yes.
And then even within the playing group, like you said, some guys really engage. So you have to have the solid answer, because some will ask you real questions and you've got to have a decent answer for them. Well, they'll come to training with a study and say, hey, ice baths don't work.
Yes.
So why am I doing an ice bath or something like that? I'm not going to mention
100%.
who brings them, but like, that happens, right? So,
100%. There was even another player I had in Perth where his background, he was a physiotherapist, and so a lot of self-diagnosing. So you're going to get challenged. So not only can you engage the person in a robust debate, discussion, or whatever it may be, but also to have that knowledge on hand. And I'm not talking about, let me come back to you and Google search it like I would. I'm talking about immediate knowledge of, the experience, the studies, the research suggests that you are wrong and this is why. That's really important. So, it's that holistic approach to the buzzword that everyone likes to use, but you got to have the theory, you got to be able to do the practical, and then there's also the human element, because not everyone's easy to work with, and so how adaptable you are into that environment is pretty important too.
Yeah, cool. All right, I think that about wraps it up.
Perfect.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.